This is Eric Prock, Director of Product Marketing at Vistara, and together with me today I have Mahesh Ramachandran, our Senior Director of Product Management, and we're going to be talking about delivering unified IT operations with Vistara 3.1. I'm going to just very, very briefly give an overview of Vistara for the benefit of anyone on the conference call who has not used Vistara before. I know that a lot of you are actually experienced Vistara users who are curious about the new features and benefits of Vistara 3.1. So for those of you, just bear with me or check your email during the quick overview of Vistara, and then you can focus on the new features, which we'll get to after just a couple of introductory slides. All right. Also, if you have any questions, please go ahead and post them under the questions area in the control panel, and we'll be delighted to address those either during the webinar or during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So just briefly, again, I want to give a quick overview of Vistara for anyone who's not familiar with it. So Vistara, the company, is headquartered in San Jose, California, and our solution enables a modern IT approach to IT operations management. So we make it easy for you to monitor and manage everything you have in the entire distributed IT infrastructure. So we make it possible for IT to act as a service provider and to serve both internal and external customers, and to use both internal and external services in order to create new services and then monitor and manage them for the benefit of both internal and external stakeholders. So Vistara is a comprehensive SaaS solution for modern IT operations management, which means you don't have to install or manage anything yourself. And you can see that we've got a great base of existing customers, integrations with many of the leading IT operations products, technologies, and tools out there, and also a really strong set of distributors, VARs, and managed service providers who have adopted Vistara to manage their own infrastructure and to offer managed services to customers. In fact, we've got over 1,000 customers using Vistara today and over 100 service providers using Vistara. Okay, so let's just briefly touch on the capabilities of Vistara. So taking a modern approach to IT operations management really requires pulling together monitoring and management of everything you have, all of your physical and virtual infrastructure, from the bottom to the top of the stack, regardless of where it is, whether it's on-premise, in a private cloud, or in a public cloud. And you've got to be able to manage the diversity of physical and virtual infrastructure that IT organizations use today. So you've got to support many platforms, many vendors, and many cloud solutions. And Vistara gives you all of that. So we've got the ability to monitor and manage hundreds of standard kinds of IT elements out of the box and templates built in that let you get started monitoring and managing them immediately. Then we also can manage both your physical and virtual infrastructure. We can manage your virtual machines regardless of where they are and make it easy for IT administrators to get console access to them, no matter where those VMs may reside. So we support the construction of private clouds. We make it easy to use converged infrastructure solutions, for example, as a platform for building new private cloud solutions. We've got built-in awareness and monitoring management support for vSpecs and FlexPod, and we can also do element management for vBlock. And then we also have the ability to monitor and manage all of your VM instances in your public cloud solutions. We have native API integrations with Amazon EC2, and we support the OpenStack API, so we're able to monitor and manage any OpenStack compliant public cloud solution, including Rackspace and more. Okay, so we give you one unified software as a service solution that lets you monitor and manage everything you have. Okay, and then just briefly a quick summary of the capabilities, and we'll move on to what's new in Vistara 3.1. So Vistara gives you a core set of capabilities for IT operations management. We have runbook automations built in and the ability to automatically handle escalation and notification to the appropriate administrator when we detect an alert. Vistara has built-in alert management capability and a really powerful alert browser that I'll actually show you during the demo section. that allows you to see all the incoming alerts and then manage them in a unified fashion. So this makes it a lot easier for administrators to understand what's going on quickly and then respond efficiently. Vistara has built-in support for patch management for your operating system instances, for configuration management for your network devices, and for antivirus management for 10 common antivirus solutions. Vistara has built-in monitoring templates for hundreds of devices out there, which are all customizable and extensible, and customers can create their own monitoring templates. Also, Vistara automatically records all administrator access sessions so that they're fully auditable later. Auditors can come in and play back administrator access sessions and see exactly who did what when. Vistara, of course, has built-in analytics, standard reports, which I'll actually be showing you later during the demo session, and a dashboard that you can customize. So basically, Vistara lets you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in your distributed IT environment. Then Vistara also has built-in support for incident and problem management and the ability to manage service requests. So you can use Vistara to construct a custom service catalog that shows an appropriate set of options to the currently logged in user through the browser-based portal. So a business user might see a basic set of options, and then an administrator could see a much more advanced set of options. We also have orchestration support, so you can define workflows of standard actions and trigger them in response to requests. And of course, Vistara is a fully multi-tenant solution, which is one of the reasons we've been so widely adopted in the service provider space. Okay, so Vistara can be used directly by enterprises to manage their infrastructure, or it can also be used by service providers to offer managed services to third parties. All right, so that's the quick summary of Vistara. Just to sum it all up, we also have diverse technology integrations with standard IT elements throughout the stack. But with that, I want to move on to the new features of Vistara 3.1. All right, so the first one of those is scheduled reporting capability. Up until now, you've had the ability to create, to run a report on demand, and then to download it and display it. Vistara now gives you the ability to schedule the running of reports automatically. So you can specify that at the end of each month, you automatically want any of our standard reports to be run and then emailed to a set of designated users. So this is good when management wants automatic reporting at the end of each month, and you'd like to automate the generation of those reports instead of having to do it manually. You can set up the schedule you want those reports on. It can be daily, weekly, or monthly. And in addition to setting up automatically run reports, you can also just log in and say, hey, I want to run a report right now on demand, and have that emailed out to somebody. So if the executive you report to says they want a copy of one of the standard reports right now, you can just do that. So you can customize your report running and generation schedules to match user needs. And then you also, users will be automatically notified by email when their reports are ready to view. So this is just a screenshot of the simple user interface you use to create a new scheduled report. You can give it a name like monthly report sent to management, and then you specify the report period and whether you want it to be run now or be a recurring report. Okay, the next new feature of Vistara 3.1 is improvements in the granularity of our role-based access controls. So you can now handle access controls at the granularity level of the device, of a group of devices, or of a credential set. So you can assign different users different sets of permissions on the same devices. So this makes it a lot easier to delegate permissions appropriately within your IT organization so that people have exactly the permissions they need to do their job, but no more. So you can implement best practices on minimizing access. So this makes it also a lot easier to support complex organizations that have multiple lines of business, because if you have line of business IT administrators who focus on administrating the infrastructure that is related to their individual line of business, you can grant them access to just that infrastructure. So again, this makes it a lot easier for Vistara to scale to complex organizations and also to implement security best practices. Okay, so here's a quick screenshot of the new interface for role-based access control. You can see here that our ITOP VAR administrator has all of the access controls, all the privileges you see in this particular screenshot. And here we're using permission sets to assign specific access controls to the administrator. Those are more granular in this release than they were in previous ones I mentioned. Okay, another new feature is we have added new dashboards for Microsoft Sharepoint and Microsoft Lync. So just like up till now, you've been able to enjoy customized dashboards for Microsoft Active Directory, Microsoft Exchange, IIS, and SQL Server. Now you have customized dashboards for Lync and Sharepoint. So the Sharepoint dashboard gives you the ability to view the configuration of your Sharepoint instance. You can see services and processes that are related to Sharepoint. You can look at the number of page views per day your Sharepoint instance is getting. And you can also break down those views by the type of view, whether it's a view of the sites, of list items, or individual documents. You can see which pages are most popular as measured by page views. And you can see information about each individual document. You can see its size, versions, the size of the total versions aggregated, and so on. So here's a quick screenshot of the Sharepoint dashboard. You can see a few of the widgets that are available on this dashboard. We'll see more later during the demo session. But you can see that it's showing our server configuration, the information about the overall Sharepoint farm, which installed products you have installed, and then information about the services you're currently running on Sharepoint. Then for Microsoft Lync, the dashboard shows you the configuration of your Lync topology. Again, it shows you related services and processes, and it'll give you a user count for the following core metrics, including the caller ID, the private line, analog devices, common area phones, response group services and their workflows, voice conference numbers, and exchange objects. And here's a screenshot of part of the new Microsoft Lync dashboard, which you'll see later during the demo session. Here we're seeing the widgets that show the information about the number of users logged in and information about the topology. Okay, so in this release, we've also added monitoring of additional open source databases and infrastructure. So a lot of these are related to popular open source NoSQL databases and web infrastructure applications. So we've added support for monitoring of Couchbase and Redis, Apache ActiveMQ, and Memcache. Here is a quick screenshot of parts of the new graphs you will see. We'll show this in more detail in the later demo session. But we've got a wonderful set of rich graphs for looking at the performance of these applications. Okay, another powerful capability of Vistara 3.1 is you can now define custom monitoring metrics for sophisticated multi-component applications and services. As we've talked about, Vistara is designed to enable IT organizations to function as service providers, and that means having the ability to accurately monitor and represent the state of a service. And services are getting ever more complex because they may no longer only rely on on-premise infrastructure. They might rely on a combination of elements that are on-premise, in private clouds, in public clouds. And service state is no longer just a binary up or down metric. It's really something that has to capture the notion of degraded service. So this requires the ability to intelligently define a performance and availability monitoring metrics for a service that meet the real needs of that service and its users and accurately reflect what it really depends on. That's what Vistara 3.1 gives you. So you can define IT services that are depending on elements from your private cloud, your public cloud, and on-premise. And then you can also create availability metrics that are for the core service, for standby elements, for failover elements, and for redundant components. And as you're defining those aggregate performance metrics, you can derive them from component level metrics using average, minimum, maximum, or sum of the inputs you're getting by monitoring each element that's contributing to the offering of that service. So what this means is that as IT organizations define complex services, the accuracy of their monitoring can keep up with the growing sophistication and complexity of the elements they're using to create the services. Okay, and later I'm going to demonstrate for you the process of setting up defining a new service and its dependencies, and showing how Vistara quickly sets up custom monitoring metrics based on the set of components you've defined to be supporting that service. All right, again, if any of you have questions during the webinar, I want to encourage you to post them into the questions area, and we can address those during the webinar or during the question and answer session at the end of the webinar. Okay, so in Vistara 3.1, we've also increased the quality of the information that we provide in the alert management user interface. So when an administrator is looking at an alert, they now get more detailed information to understand the significance of that alert. So the impact assessment for an alert now includes the device groups to which the device in question belongs, the sites to which the device belongs, the services in which the device participates, and the service level associated with the device. So here's a screenshot of the improved alert user interface. You can see here that we've got fields that show a description of the monitor that will list any device groups the device is associated with, the site it's at, the service levels it's associated with, and then also other notes that are made by the administrators related to the alert. Another feature that will be of interest to Vistara partners is our simplified Skew management capabilities in Vistara 3.1. So now when you've got a set of SKUs, you want to offer them to a variety of clients, it's a lot easier to do that. So you can easily assign and unassign SKUs to individual clients' devices and display the SKUs that are assigned to a given client. So this helps service providers and enterprise IT organizations that have multiple clients to track their SKUs across those clients. Here's a screenshot of the simplified Skew management user interface. So you can see we've got the available devices on the left-hand side and the devices that we've assigned a given SKU to on the right-hand side. Okay, so if there aren't any questions at this point, let's go ahead and proceed to the demo so I can show you some of these new capabilities. Again, if you've got questions, please post them in the GoToWebinar control, and we'll address them during the demo or during the Q&A session. All right, so let's first look at the scheduling of a report. So here is the reports user interface that those of you who are Vistara users already will be familiar with. And we've gone into the customer executive report. And we're going to take a look at the customer executive report here. So here are the automatic runs of that report that have been scheduled already. And we're going to create a new automatic running of this report. So let's say monthly report sent to executive management. Okay, we want the reporting period to be the previous month, and the schedule will be recurring. Now, if I'd left that on now, then the report would just be run right now for the preceding month and then sent to the users who are expected to receive that. So I want to email out a link to this report when it runs, and I'm going to have that go to me. But obviously, if this were a real production example, then I'd probably specify a list of executives who had requested to receive the report. Okay, so I'm going to save that, and now monthly report sent to executive management has been added to the list of automatic reports. You can see that it'll be sent, it'll be executed at the end of December and then run on for the first time on January 1st of 2014. So this means that those reports that you've become used to using in Vistara are now easy to run automatically and ensure that the right people who want to receive the reports do so automatically. All right, next let's talk about the improvements to the role-based access controls. Okay, so we're in the Setup menu of Vistara, and we're looking at, under Account Management, at Roles. So you can see that we can define our roles over here, and roles can now be associated with device groups, devices, or user groups, as well as users, credentials, and permission sets. So you can create a new role, and you can assign that role permissions in a very granular way, down to the level of the individual device. So again, this helps you to give IT administrators access to the capabilities that they should be able to access without having more power than they need. So it makes it easier to implement best practices for privilege management. Another thing is that IT administrators can now assign different users different sets of permissions on the same device. This was not possible in previous versions. So this helps you increase the granularity of power assignment on individual devices. One group of super users can have access to all the capabilities of the device. Another one might have access to a limited subset. All right, now let's turn to our new support for Microsoft Lync and Sharepoint. So we've gone over to the Infrastructure tab, and we're looking at a Windows server. And you can see that in addition to running IIS, which is one of the applications we have built-in support for that you're probably already familiar with, now we've got a tab here for Microsoft Lync. So we've got the same kind of automatic status monitoring graphs and widgets for Lync that you've become accustomed to for the other applications we already had support for. So you can see here we're counting the number of users who are accessing Microsoft Lync, and we're looking at the topology, the clusters, machines, and so on. Like our other Microsoft applications, you can customize this dashboard, move the widgets around, and you can see your server configuration, the sites you're running at, the pools you have, and the services you're running. So let's take a look at the new dashboard for Microsoft SharePoint. So again, you can see basic information about your SharePoint server, its configuration here. All the standard configuration information is exposed here for your inspection. You can see information about the overall SharePoint farm. You can see what SharePoint products you currently got installed. You can see information about the databases that are supporting SharePoint, the content databases, and also the processes you're currently running as part of your SharePoint instance. And finally, a list of the services that are being run. So this gives you the same kind of easy access to monitor the state of your SharePoint instances that you've already become accustomed to for other Microsoft applications and the other applications that Microsoft supports, including many of the open source applications. Okay, speaking of which, let's move over to taking a look at our improved support for open source application monitoring and management. So we're looking at a Linux server here, and on the Graphs tab for that Linux server, you can see that we've now got a large number of built-in graphs for monitoring Couchbase and ActiveMQ, which are running on this server. So I'll try to scroll through here a little bit slowly so you guys can track it on the webinar. But you can see that we've got graphs of lots of standard monitoring metrics for ActiveMQ and Couchbase, including connections, queue size, the percentage you're using of your broker store, inode utilization, disk utilization, the average in-queue time, the Couchbase pace sets per second, and so on. So for anyone who is a ActiveMQ or a Couchbase or a Redis or a Memcache administrator, our built-in support for the monitoring and management of these applications and the dashboards we've got here are going to make your life easier with Vistara 3.1. Again, we've just got a wonderful set of graphs here. You know, it goes on and on. You can see the Couchbase hits per sec, the CPU utilization, memory utilization, all presented in an easy-to-understand graphical format. All right. Now, let's move on to defining custom monitoring metrics for custom services. So I'm over here on the Setup tab again, and we're going to create custom attributes that allow us to capture the set of IT elements that are supporting our new service. And then we're going to go take a look at the new service under the Infrastructure tab and see how it's then monitored and managed by Vistara and represented in an easy-to-understand graphical fashion. All right, so let's start by defining a new custom attribute that's going to help us to identify the particular IT elements that are supporting this service. This is going to be a Linux service I'm going to demonstrate, and it's going to rely on a particular set of Linux servers, which we're going to call Linux Server Set 4. Okay, so we've created a new custom attribute, and then I'm going to create a new attribute value associated with that service, and we're going to call it servers. Okay, so now we've created a new custom attribute and the attribute type. So now we're going to try to assign some of our existing servers to that new set of servers. So let's say that this new service depends on a rather large number of servers and devices and external servers. So here you see that in this list of devices and logical services, you can include everything that this service depends on, and that can be a combination of physical servers, virtual servers, and also internal or external services. So as IT organizations move to a modern IT model in which they're service providers and they are constructing new services on top of existing ones, Vistara gives you the ability to represent that the way in which the new service is being constructed and all the dependencies it has, whether it's on services or virtual machines or physical servers, whatever you have. So we're going to go ahead and make this depend on Exchange server. Let's use our FIT database master and data store. And let's see anything else we want to include here. Now let's include a few load balancers, memcache servers, a NoSQL server. All right, so let's move those over. Okay, so now here is the set of servers that the new service depends on. So let's submit that. Okay, so we've now created a new logical service, and we can go over under the Infrastructure tab, and we can create a new logical service that depends on that. So let's define our new service, and let's make this Linux Set 3. Okay, so here's Eric's new service that depends on Linux Server Set 3. And you can see that we can use these sets of custom attributes that we've defined previously to help us define which elements we're depending on. Okay, so now we've got our new Linux Server Set 3, and we can go take a look. And we can see that we got a standard dashboard built in for our service. So you've got measurements of service availability here and the service health that have automatically populated themselves as a result of setting up that service. So Vistara 3.1 makes it easy for you to define a new service that depends on other IT elements or services in a hierarchical fashion, and then create custom metrics of the service's health and availability, and to easily represent those in a graphical way that's easy to understand. All right, so I mentioned previously the improvements to our alert management user interface. So all of you who are Vistara users already are probably familiar with our alert management UI. That's where IT administrators spend a lot of their time. And here we're looking at the set of alerts this instance of Vistara is currently monitoring and managing. So we're looking at the alerts basically since the beginning of December. So let's submit that and bring up to date our list of alerts. And let's drill down and take a look at this device not reachable alert. So here we scroll down and you can see our improved alert management UI. And you can see that we now have fields that will represent the device groups this alert is associated with, which site it's associated with, the service levels it's supposed to support, and so on. So basically, Vistara 3.1 gives you improved user interface for seeing the true impact of your alerts, what a given alert might be affecting, and it makes it easier for administrators to accurately assess how important an alert really is or is not. All right, so finally I want to show you our improved management for Skews in Vistara 3.1. So here we've got the Skew management user interface, and when Vistara provides a Vistara partner a list of Skews, now it's easy for you to go into this user interface, select the Skews that you have been assigned, and then assign them to devices from any of your clients. Okay, so again, for those of you who are not Vistara partners, that feature will be of less particular interest, but it helps the Vistara partners to allocate particular SKUs to their various clients and manage them on an ongoing basis. Once you've assigned the SKUs to a client's devices, you can then drill down on that client and see which SKUs they have currently by device or as a whole at the level of the client. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions. If you have a question about Vistara 3.1, wow, we've actually got a good set of questions here, so let's go and address these in order. And let's see, so also, Mahesh, let's make certain you unmute yourself so that you can jump in here and participate. Okay, so let's look at this. Will alert details be shown at a summary level as well? Mahesh, you want to take a crack about that one?
Yeah, sure. So that's a good question. At this point, the alert details page does have a top-level section that is intended to be the summary. We intend to continue to enhance that summary, and key information would be available in that section. But if you have in mind a specific way in which you'd like to see a summary of an alert, we'd be interested in your input. So feel free to pass it along via email or connect with one of us by email after the call. We'd be happy to understand and look at what you'd like to see.
All right. Our next question coming in from Kevin is, what are some other players in your space and why is Vistara superior to those? Okay, good question. So one of the reasons is that Vistara is a SaaS solution, so we're going to be able to continue to improve Vistara on a much faster basis and rapidly roll out those improvements much faster than other solutions that are on-prem where you have to do the updates yourself, and also for solutions that are not truly multi-tenant solutions like Vistara. So one of the reasons we're able to innovate so quickly at Vistara is because we're a fully multi-tenant solution. So we don't need to pay the overhead cost of rolling out a new instance to each customer one at a time. We update the central instance, and then everyone benefits from it. So Vistara is able to innovate much more quickly. We also are a solution that was designed from the ground up to support a modern IT approach where you're combining the management of on-premise assets, private cloud, and public cloud assets. There are a lot of solutions out there that were really built for a on-prem world, and they're trying to bolt on management of cloud assets, but they don't really fit that very well because they require each customer to deploy the solution and then set up their own connections to the cloud instances. But Vistara, as a native cloud application, very naturally can manage the modern IT world of today. The other thing is there are a lot of cloud-only solutions out there that will manage public cloud solutions that can't do anything for your on-prem assets. And that's, again, one of the things that really distinguishes Vistara is that we support all of these through a single SaaS multi-tenant solution. Mahesh, do you want to add anything to that?
The other I would note is just along the breadth dimension. Vistara, if you look at traditional IT management tools or even sort of current generation IT management tools, they're focused on a particular technology domain, whether it's storage management or network management or server or application. You really don't see IT management tools that cover the breadth of technology domains all the way from application to network to storage and server. And Vistara's one of Vistara's distinguishing aspects is that it covers that breadth of coverage across domains.
All right, then the next question coming in from Brian is, please confirm access to credentials is restricted by client but not by device or credential. Mahesh, you want to elaborate a little bit on our credential management?
Yeah, sure. So Brian, the answer is both, all of the above. Access to a credential can be restricted if you choose to configure it that way on a user basis at the client level or at the partner level, as well as on a per device basis. And the use case or scenario where you would apply the per device access control for a credential would be, let's say you have a Windows server and you have two types of users within your client. You have Windows admins who need to be able to log in or launch consoles or RDP sessions into that Windows server using the Windows domain credentials. And then you have regular users that you don't want to be launching console sessions using the Windows domain credentials. And so with Vistara's role-based access control, you can, with what the feature that we just rolled out, you could provide your Windows admins access to the Windows credentials, the admin credentials, and regular users to a different set of credentials. So you have sort of maximum flexibility. It all depends on sort of at what level you want to control the access.
All right. So then our next question is there any logging associated with user activity, specifically accessing credentials?
Right, that's a good question. So we have the short answer is we have some primitive audit logging that Vistara does and tracks, but it's not as elaborate as it will be in shortly. So expect that we'll have detailed audit logging on all changes to credentials, access to credentials, and so on. We're not quite there yet.
All right. Another one, is there a help desk ticketing system built into your product?
Yeah, I'll take that quickly. So yes, the short answer is yes. Vistara has a full-blown ticketing system that is built in and is integrated with Vistara, in that you can go from an alert to a ticket and manage that ticket through its life cycle, and then retrospectively go back and look at the response times and have reports that show how much time you spent resolving the ticket that came from which alert and that sort of thing. So we do have a ticketing system. We'd be happy to demo that to partners and customers, so feel free to reach out to us.
All right. The next one is, does Vistara do event correlation across the elements of the service?
Yeah, great question. So let's see here. Vistara does limited alert correlation today, and by limited I mean in the following specific way. Within a device, Vistara can correlate alerts that alerts of the same type that occur repeatedly. It will deduplicate them automatically and collapse them into a single alert. So you only see a single alert if you have multiple alerts consecutively of the same type. That's one kind of correlation it does. The second kind of correlation Vistara does with some user guidance is you can go to an alert and easily look at all the alerts of the same type across other devices in the same group or different device groups, as well as sites. So it's user-driven alert correlation. So those are the two types of correlation Vistara does. The type of correlation that Vistara does not do yet, and which is something we're working on, is automatically correlate device alerts across devices without any user guidance, and be able to deduplicate alerts across devices. So that is something we're working on.
Yeah, that's coming in future releases.
Yes.
Okay, so then we've got a follow-up here. So specific to the first question, we would like to be able to see the group and service level at the summary level associated with the alert in order to process it more quickly. Can this be captured as an enhancement request?
I believe we did. We do actually. Vistara does that today. That's the demo that Eric showed. Maybe Eric, if you want to go back and quickly show that, what we added in this release. I'd be interested. Yeah, I'd be interested in the participants' feedback on the presentation of the information. It may not quite be what you have in mind, but so yeah. So what Eric is just showing is he drilled into an alert, and up at the top, can you just highlight the section where that shows the right there, right? Yes. So it shows the device groups. In this case, there's only one group that the device is part of. If there are multiple, it'll list them all. The site as well as the service levels associated with that device, and then if the device is part of a logical service, that will be listed here as well. So this is the summary that you get today. Again, as I mentioned, if a different type of presentation of the summary would be helpful to you, definitely I'd like to understand what you have in mind, and we'd be happy to entertain that.
Oh, it looks like Brian's got a follow-up here. He says he was referring to at the alert list level itself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I misunderstood. Okay. Yeah, at the alert list level, yeah, at this point, that information is not, it is not a column that you can select to be included in the alert list, but it does make sense. We'll take that up as an enhancement request. Yes, certainly. Thanks for bringing that up.
All right. The next question is single sign-on a part of Vistara, and can you link out to the various service components from the console? For example, RDP to a server or open SharePoint administration pages.
Let's see. So there's two things that come to mind, and I'd like to understand if what the participant is referring to. So Vistara does integrate with single sign-on services, meaning a user in Vistara can be authenticated against an external cloud-based authentication service, such as particularly OneLogin, as well as Active Directory. So Vistara users can be authenticated through against an external identity or authentication service, particularly OneLogin for cloud, and Active Directory if it's an enterprise scenario. Right? So that's provided. Now, secondarily, somewhat unrelated to the first part, Vistara allows you to launch RDP, Telnet, and other VNC and other types of consoles to the devices that you manage through Vistara. So if you have a Windows server that you're managing, you can launch a console to Vistara, and the authentication for that console launch, it is using a different, it's using the credentials of that device itself. So that's a separate authentication system unrelated to the authentication for the Vistara user itself. So there's sort of two levels here, and we could, if you have further clarification, you'd like, send us an email, and we'd be happy to clarify.
Great. Okay, another question coming in from Kevin. If we have an existing SaaS PSA tool, do we have to replace it with Vistara, or can they integrate? Mahesh, why don't you talk a bit about the Vistara APIs? Yeah,
sure, absolutely. So the short answer is no. You do not have to replace your existing PSA tools. Vistara can coexist and integrate with your existing PSA tools, specifically in the following way. Vistara has out-of-the-box integrations, two-way integrations with ServiceNow, Autotask, and ConnectWise. These three PSA systems, or Autotask and ConnectWise, or PSA and ServiceNow is more of a general purpose ITSM tool. So Vistara has out-of-the-box integration with those three, meaning any ticket that you create within Vistara automatically syncs with a ticket in that third-party system, and vice versa. Any tickets that you update in a third-party system automatically sync with tickets within Vistara. if you have a PSA tool that is not in the out-of-the-box list, you could write an adapter through which you can perform the synchronization using Vistara APIs. So we have open APIs that are documented. We'd be happy to provide documentation on those to you, through which you can build your own integration, or we could build an adapter for you. It's relatively straightforward to build an adapter.
All right, another question is, do you have the ability to assign tickets to users?
Yes. Yes. Short answer is yes.
Okay. All right. So another question is, I'd like to provide users console access across all my Amazon cloud instances, but I don't want to manage privilege keys. Can your new support for role-based access controls help with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, yeah, the short answer is yes. Let me sort of recap the scenario. It's a little, bears some explaining. So if you have a public cloud and you're using, let's say Amazon, and you would like to provide your end users self-service access to those consoles, typically what you would do without Vistara, we would set up private public keys and assign, have your users deal with those keys and use those keys to SSH keys to access their consoles, which means you'd have to manage those private keys, recycle, be able to refresh them and roll them out and so on. With Vistara, you don't really have to do any of that. With the ability to provide role-based access control at the credential set level, you would centrally create, let's say, a single private public key pair that you'd use across all your Amazon instances, and your end users can simply log into Vistara using their Vistara credentials and be able to launch consoles through Vistara using those keys, the centrally managed key, that single key, and you don't have to expose that key to any of your end users. So your end users can launch consoles using the key but without actually being able to see the key. And some of our customers using this. Yeah, I just wanted to add that some of our customers are actually using this feature and they find it very valuable.
Great. Okay, then also another question is, you talked about the new support for access control and credential sets. Can you give an example of why someone might want to use that?
Right, I mentioned that, I gave an example earlier. So if you have a Windows server and you have two types of users within the same client, you have admin users that need to be able to launch consoles and using the Windows admin credential, and then you have regular users that need to be able to access the Windows server just using regular credentials. So same device, two different types of users that need to log in using two different credentials. You can do that with Vistara. You'd create two credential sets, one for the admin credential, one for the regular credential, and provide these two sets of users. One set of users, the admin users, will only get access to the admin credentials, and the regular users will only get access to the regular credentials, and each would use just the credentials that they're entitled to.
All right, listen, I think we're running out of time at this point, so I want to thank everyone for connecting to the webinar and for the great series of questions. You can find all of our webinars archived at our website, vistarait.com. We are always happy to set up a in-person or over-the-web demo for people who'd like to learn more about Vistara. So again, Vistara 3.1 includes a lot of features that make it easier to manage modern IT environments in which services are built out of multiple components, including both on-premise and cloud-based ones, services that are composed out of IT elements as well as supporting services. So Vistara makes it easier for administrators to get an accurate picture of the true state of their services, their conformance to service level requirements, and so that makes it a lot easier to take a modern approach to unified IT operations management. All right, so if you want to learn more about Vistara, please visit our website, vistarait.com, or just give us a call. So for Vistara, this is Eric Brock and Mahesh Ramachandran. Thank you very much for attending.